Hello, everybody, and welcome to creating culture across creative communities as part of our first ever Midwest Design Week. I'm really excited that you're here and excited for this amazing panel. I'm Herb Vincent Peterson. I'm the Education Director for AIGA Indianapolis. We're one of 70 plus chapters of AIGA nationwide. Tonight's panel could not have happened without the tremendous efforts from Kaylee Kohler, also at Indianapolis AIGA, Ashton Spahn, AIGA Cincinnati, and Jacqueline Mullen at AIGA Louisville. These folks worked tirelessly, meeting and connecting to bring you some of the most amazing individuals to learn and be inspired from. We have great support this evening also from Nick Camino from AIGA Cincinnati, Jacob Parr from AIGA Toledo. Importantly, Midwest Design Week would not have been possible without the support of our amazing sponsors this year. Thank you all, really, for your dedication in providing the best for our design community. We want to also encourage all of you to keep participating via Slack and make new connections happen. Don't forget, we are only in the middle of the first part of the week, and looking ahead, we have even more great events planned and lined up for you. From the world of design and distillation, bourbon, I'm looking forward to that one tomorrow, to design and liberation on Friday. Keep coming back for more, and you can find any other details that you might need at midwestdesignweek.com. We hope that you all are enjoying Midwest Design Week at this point. Our hope for you to know is that we've wanted to establish new collaborations within AIGA chapters all throughout the Midwest. We know that next year will be just as great with new chapters leading the way, so you must stay tuned. From passion to protest, learning the ropes and thinking about impact, these events have brought new and exciting insights to each of us this week. And if anything, we are reminded of how important it is to continue to learn and engage within a community. We are all truly thankful that you are here, and thank you for building community. To get us going, I want to introduce to you Jacinda Walker, our moderator for this evening's panel. Jacinda is known for her tireless work in diversity, design research, and strategy aimed at social enterprise and community. She has a heart for addressing the diversity gap within our profession. And I get excited because I love what Jacinda is doing. Jacinda's breakthrough thesis, while at Ohio State University, has become a vital text for all of us to read. And honestly, if you have not yet read it, I want to encourage you all to go to her website tonight, download it, read it, and be amazed. Jacinda went on and founded Design Explorer, an organization that puts action into place and reinforces a mission that aims to design a diverse future by expanding access to design education for youth and raising awareness for corporate organizations. And if this really isn't enough, Jacinda also serves as chair of AIGA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force and represents AIGA Cleveland wherever she goes. Wow, that is an awful lot and a lot of good. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you all this evening, Jacinda Walker.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much for that amazing intro. I do have to share, I'm only chair emeritus right now for the task force. Actually, our chair is actually Gus Granger. So they are doing an amazing job, and I've enjoyed being able to be on the task force instead of chairing and just seeing how it's moving on to this next generation. But that is not what we are here for tonight. Tonight, we're here to understand and talk about this thing called culture and community. I have some amazing panelists joining us this evening. I'm going to be kind of scrolling through so I can see all of your lovely faces. So if you are one of these individuals who are hiding or not showing your video, please, please, please oblige us and let us see your faces. Let us see your reactions to us, because we really want to have this conversation about community with everyone. So I'm going to start to share my screen, and then we're going to kind of break into this dialogue with our amazing panelists. And so if there are any questions or things like that that pop up as we're moving forward, we would love if you dropped those in the chat. And then again, if anything comes up that we don't get to address, you all can reach out to us as well to answer those kind of questions. So without further ado, let me get in these slides. Okay. There we go. I think I've got this lined up. I mean, are you guys seeing these all right? Yes, no?
Looks good on my end, Jacinda.
It does. Thank you so much for the feedback. I appreciate it. So as Herb said, my name is Jacinda Walker. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. And tonight, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation about how do we create culture across creative communities. And so when we were putting this panel together, I really, really, really encouraged the Midwest team to help me find and reach out to some voices that we may not have heard a lot from, voices that we've seen in our community, voices that live in our neighborhoods, and hopefully today they'll be able to help me on this path. So I'm going to start allowing each of our panelists to introduce themselves as they are shown here on the screen. And after all of the introductions, then we will go into our top questions for the evening. We will start with Hung-Hsiang.
Hi everyone, my name is Hung-Hsiang Chen, currently work for Lilly in Indianapolis. I moved to US roughly 5 years ago to join Lilly and run a design team here. Really great opportunity to meet you all. Aside from Lilly, I'm also the IDSA Indianapolis chair. So looking forward for joining the panel and have an interesting discussion about the culture.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next up on our panel is Nicte.
Hey everyone, I'm Nicte Cuevas. I'm a brand strategist and graphic designer. I'm the one that's a little bit farther south from you guys. I am currently in San Antonio, so I am representing the San Antonio chapter, but it's wonderful to meet you guys. And I do have my own design firm, Nicte Creative Design, so I'm so excited to be here and talk about culture with you guys.
Excellent. Next up is Omar.
Hello, my name is Omar Rashan. I'm based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. I am a commercial designer, also a traditional painter as well. And I have a design company by the name of Design Crate. And I've been designing for a little over 18 to 20 years, close, around that range.
Excellent. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I'm kind of just going to jump in here because, well, at least I think I am, minus the whole technology thing. Did I do it right? Nope, I certainly did not. Hold on. There we go. Here we go. So where I kind of want to start our conversation tonight with my esteemed panelists, as you can tell, we're all from different places, right? We all have this different thing going on, not just as designers, we're even in different organizations, right? And so what I really wanted to kind of start our conversation off to kind of learn some extra things about each of you all. I would love if maybe you all maybe jumped in one or two at a time and told me a little bit about the culture of your name.
I can start from myself.
Please.
Yes.
I apologize. I said your name incorrectly. You'll have to make sure to teach me how to say it properly.
No worry. This is part of the cultural journey that we are into. Again, my name is Hung-Hsiang, and I'm actually come from Taiwan. The way to pronounce my name, if I can help, is as you can see, the Hong and the Shang in there. The first one I guess is easy, Hong, right? The Shang is fairly simple. If you remove the first the H on the Shang, they actually kind of representing the sound.
So the H is silent.
The second H is silent. Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah. And I think there's a little bit interesting cultural kind of things that I think when Jacinda and I were talking about is last name as well, right? And it's interestingly that even all Chinese ethnicity that have the similar like last name as a Chen, but it's actually spelled very different from country to country. Like for Taiwan, spelled as C-H-E-N. As far as I know, in the same name spelled in Singapore is actually T-A-N, Tan. Just is a pronunciation from a different dialect. But when we actually writing down in the character, it's identical. So it's just also from the this community inside the subgroup that we can actually tell each other where you come from by our name. Yeah. So just some of the
So like a
interesting
subgroup,
nuances.
a dialect,
Yeah,
all of those going on.
yeah.
Omar, what about yourself? Do you have some culture behind your name?
Yeah, my grandmother. So I had a few uncles who basically studied under the religion of Islam. My grandmother, even though she was Seventh-day Adventist, so there is a little connection through Islam, but also she was in love with Omar Sharif as well. So it's like all of those things. Was the stories that was told to me as a young man. Like your grandmother was in love with Omar Sharif, and then also having those cultures. Like I had Islam, I had Japanese cultured art, all in throughout the home. So all of that played a big role in that.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Nicte, tell us a little bit about the culture in your name so that we can learn a little bit more about you as well.
Absolutely. So I'm a little bit of what I guess I can call myself a Latina mutt, because my dad's Mexican, my mom's Colombian, and I was raised in Venezuela. So story to my name is that it's a Mayan goddess name, and it means goddess of the flowers. So you say Nicte. So it actually has an accent on the E, but I've never really used it with an E. And it's really been great because once I found out why they gave me that name, my parents wanted to give me a name that was very different. And obviously we were living in Mexico at that time. I left Mexico City when I was around 4 to go to Venezuela. And at first I didn't like my name because so many people had a hard time pronouncing it, but I later embraced it because now I know that I have such a unique name that it's so much easier for people to remember me. Even if they remember me for the one with the hard name to pronounce, it actually helps me for people to recognize me. So I've totally embraced it. And now when people ask me, I'm really happy to share from my heritage.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that that's something else I think that you and I really have in common. My mother gave me this name, Jacinda. It's actually Greek and Spanish. And so I have a ton of Latina friends who call me Jacinda because that is how in Latina culture it is pronounced. And so it actually means beautiful purple flower, which is really ironic because, my favorite color is magenta. So, I thought it was like, wow, okay, with some stuff going on there. But I, like you, Nicte, was horribly did not want this name as a 7-year-old. Did not. It was hard to pronounce. I just wanted to fit in. I remember once I tried to change my name in 2nd grade because you know how you turn out the Valentine's Day cards and everybody gets their name. So we had a substitute teacher and she asked me what my name was. And so I gave her my family nickname, right? And so when my mom found out, she said, "You did what? So you just decided that's what you was gonna do to the name I gave you, right?" And so it was then that I knew there was something different about this name. Like it wasn't enough for me that there was no one else ever in the classroom that had the same name as me, but it was my mother's devout, like she took such pride that she found this name for me and that it identified me. And so I probably wasn't until college, like you're talking about, I didn't kind of embrace it myself. Do you think that as you were growing into this place of where you are, your identity, how much of your identity played a part about embracing the culture or even understanding the culture?
Ooh, that's a great question. I guess I'll go ahead since that just really ties into me. I think I grew up in Venezuela, so I didn't come to the States till I was around 18 for college. And I feel very blessed that I was able to grow up in an environment that I had. A lot of my friends were from all over the world. So some of my closest friends were from Nigeria, Korea. So I had friends from everywhere. So to me, that was very natural to embrace culture and that curiosity to learn about my friends. I would always try to barter my food that I felt was so plain and boring for my friends' foods because I didn't get that at home. It was something new and I would always ask questions. And I feel that I didn't cherish that as much until I left and I came here. And I still, even though I was in Houston at that time, I felt a big culture shock in that transition. And it made me later appreciate what I had. I think sometimes as kids, you don't really appreciate the things that you have until you get older. So I feel that really kind of shaped the person that I am today and how much I love my culture and love other cultures.
Omar, talk to us a little bit about this. I love this fact that you have this background with the Islam, as well as your mom, like an Omar Sharif. Like, talk to us a little bit about how your identity, like, how did you adapt to this? Like, did you know? Did you like what happened?
I think I had the same experience as you guys with the name. Like, I really didn't like my name because it was weird. There was a Omar books, like some type of book club that was in the area that I was from, that was all through the school system. And he was a caveman. So I didn't really like the fact that I was attached to this character. And I was the only African-American that I knew at that time for many years that was named Omar, right? So what it did for me as I grew and got older, it had made me more curious. It made me search out. So I really early on started to understand culture very early. And so I navigated understanding culture through because of my name. So I was wondering why I was the only kid growing up named Omar, because you would hear all these common names throughout Black culture. And I'm wondering, like, why am I the only one named Omar? So as I started looking around the home and started looking around how the images in the home was just not like a standard situation, I was like, okay, I'm starting to understand this now. Whether it's places that my grandparents been, or rather it was the ideal of I want to go there and it's beautiful. It's even, so for me, I even traveled a lot early, especially in my 20s. I spent a lot of time just traveling, and that was because that name made me want to go beyond where I came from. And so, yeah, that's kind of like the story behind that.
Yes, no, I love it. Hung-Hsiang, are you going to talk to us a little bit about yours? How did you come into this identity and understanding the culture you're in?
That's actually a very interesting topic. I think not like everyone have an early awakening. I am actually much, much later in my age that I suddenly realized the culture and also names. Like I grow up in Taiwan, this tiny island, much smaller than Indiana, right? Surrounded by mountains. And I didn't really leave the island till, after graduating from my college, doing my national service, do some work. Roughly in 26 years old, I come to Ohio State to get my master's degree. After that, my journey is kind of totally open. Yeah, OH.
Okay, I know, right? OH. Come on, yes. Come with it.
Yeah, yes. And from there, right, there's an interesting discussion. Even my name at the time when I come to US, I actually make an English name. Okay.
You did?
I did, yes. And in order, it's kind of like an interesting cultural thing that in Taiwan, everybody make a name of English, whether it makes sense or not, right? Tom, Jim, Candy. Sometimes it's just a very strange name, just like a fruit or something, that just because the person liked the fruit, right? And just from the, maybe from, I guess from all of your view, is just like, why you even name yourself like that? At that time, I named myself Stanley, just like I admire someone called Stanley, so I called myself Stanley. And till one day, someone next to me, in the McDonald's asked me, hey, what's your name? And I actually just like, okay, my name is Stanley. And just like, no, that's not your name. What's your name? What? You don't know me. My name's Stanley. Just like, no, that's not your name. Till he kind of keep asking me the same question. And I said, yes, my name's Hung-Hsiang. Just like, then why don't you use Hung-Hsiang? And that trigger my reflection that why? And then I start looking into my surrounding context of everyone, like who changed their name? And apparently no one. And if so, then I ask myself why I need to. And then I start getting a little bit more, getting into that awareness of the culture of my name and start appreciate that, right? And also start appreciate the sensitivity about different cultural nuances. Because a lot of time, like I also kind of behave more like a Taiwanese, try to be very friendly, and I'll hug people or kind of put my arm around people till one of my classmates kind of tell me, hey, Hung-Hsiang, just let you know, or at the time Stanley. Hey Stanley, you know one thing? There's something called social distance here. Okay, in US. Okay, we don't do this. We do this. Okay, so make sure that you have arm distance for everyone. And just like, okay, lesson learned. Yeah. So this kind of like small things kind of accumulate my sensitivity around that, and also help me to understand my own culture too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Now that is not right. They told you that, you know, we're not doing, we got social distancing up here because my father's in the military. So I spent a lot of time, my early years in Europe. And when I got back to the United States, I couldn't believe how much people were hugging over here. Oh my God. Like, oh, I even know you.
Yeah.
I cannot believe they told you something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe it's school. It's all about culture. It's also about context, right? So that may be a wrong context.
Come on. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have that conversation about identity and culture. Let's talk about identity, culture, and your creativity. Because one of the things that I quickly found out as a graphic designer, as a Black graphic designer, as a Black female graphic designer, is that my name didn't fit. It didn't look like it. My style of design wasn't like the others, and I clearly had come from a different place. When in all actuality, I was in Cleveland and I did my undergraduate work at the University of Akron. So I was only 45 minutes down the street, but everyone swore I was not in the right community because of my name, because of my race, because of my gender. So I spent a lot of time figuring out where in this creative place do I belong? So looking for the different cultures and how I might fit. Are any of you all, or any of you all experienced anything like that, trying to loop and connect that identity, the culture, and the creativity together?
I'll go ahead. I think for me, that's super connected to, I think I was like super nodding my head. That's very connected to who I am. I think it was stemming until I really truly embraced being unique and my diversity and my heritage that I really felt like I could celebrate that. So how that's really translated to my work is I love using bold colors that are tied into these emotions. So for me, it really just defines everything about how we represent ourselves, how we want to show up in the world too. And I think it is too very much, you know, as foreigners in, or even because we move around a lot too. My husband's in the military, so every place has its own unique experiences. And I feel it's an opportunity to celebrate who you are, but also understand the places that you're in. So that's how I've tied it in, as a way of celebrating diversity for myself, but also learning of the place that I moved to and celebrating that diversity too.
Excellent. Omar, talk to us about connecting these three things.
Okay, so like, it's my experience is it's been, how can I explain this? So my government name is Omar Jones, right?
Yes.
And that's when I realized, I had a moment where I realized that when I changed my name to Omar Rashan as an artist or creative, things changed. It was something about that Omar Jones that gave the employer or whoever was on the other side before they can see me that he's Black. So for some reason, I didn't get the opportunity, and I utilized my name, Omar Rashan, as a way to become a purple cow in the marketplace, to say, who's this guy? And create that curiosity. And as you get into the portfolio piece of what I do, or you look at every aspect, you like, oh my God, this dude he's well-rounded in different areas. And so to me, I start understanding and embracing the O in my name, and understanding that everything comes back full circle. And I start connecting with the universe. I start connecting with my career. I start identifying with who I am. And I had so much value within myself that and let me say this, as a designer, I struggled in the beginning because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was doing what I thought I should be doing to try to get hired. And everywhere I went, everybody said, man, you got a great portfolio, but you're overqualified. but nobody would give me a chance in the beginning. So what it did is sparked the entrepreneur in me to go out, learn about contracts, learn about obtaining businesses, whether it's small, non-for-profit. I just figured it out, and I realized value, and it kind of, the name allowed me to kind of navigate a little bit different, if that makes any sense. So I just kind of got away with got rid of Jones, even though Omar Rashan is my name. I just embraced that. And then that played a role in, understanding culturally, this makes sense for me, Omar Rashan versus Omar Jones.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. Hung, you want to talk with us a little bit about how you began to fit in your creative community with this culture, with this identity?
Sure. I think I would like to interpret identity more of how I behave and how I think inside. Okay. I would say name definitely play an important part. But I mean, while I have the fortune to actually build different teams in Singapore, Denmark, and now in US, right? One thing that gave me a much more sensitivity and awareness of the difference is about my identity is about how I approach a problem or how I approach person as a creative. Okay. And that actually very tying back to where I grow and how I get educated. As a stereotype, as you can imagine, as an Asian living in the crowded city, that's definitely fit into the stereotype that I grow up in the environment that everybody just say, shut up, just do what I told you to do, right? There's an authority, there's a layer, there's hierarchy in the society. Not till in US, come to US study, and it really reopened and reshaped my mind. And from then, like I mentioned, I try to stay sensitive. And the interesting part I see is every culture, even though we all encourage so-called collaboration, the way you interpret that word is very different. And the way we behave about collaboration is very different, right? And what I feel the interesting about my side is I always try to find that win-win connection and the balance of everyone. And that is quite unique from the place I went to in every place. And that's where I feel that I actually bring my identity to the team and bring the team together.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate that definition of identity. I also want to make sure that I address, I've left the screen, the definition of culture up here, the social behavior and norms found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, beliefs, arts, laws, customs, capabilities, and habits of the individuals in these groups, right? So there's like a lot going on. It just in defining culture, right? Have you all had a moment, and please just jump in and answer, but have you had a moment where you had to say, okay, this is the culture that I want, or this is the thing that I'm going for? I love it when Omar talked about, hey, I was doing something I didn't want to do. And once I started, drilling down, really figuring it out, I found something. So can you talk with me a little bit about how you know what culture you like? Like, how do you know, like, especially in this creative community with like so much going on?
I'll start off and kind of expand because I can go into it a little bit further as well. What I realized that when I started bracing the type of art that I wanted to do or the type of work I wanted to create that communicated what I've always known, because I felt like as a child, I studied people, I studied culture. Didn't even realize, because, growing up being poor, and you always have this thing, like as a kid, you like, man, I one day want that. Or you imagine, so when you're looking at these people, everybody's a different culture. At least where I grew up, I seen different variations of culture. So for a long time, I started looking at magazines. I started studying through the magazines as a kid, wasn't even realizing that this would set me up for the future to get into design and all these things. But from analyzing magazines, looking at like how things look a certain type of way, from font style, I started identifying like, okay, this is why they use this font. Like I said, I didn't even know it was preparing me for the future. So what it was doing when I was learning all of this, it was teaching me to speak in another language. It was giving me a way to communicate. So like, as I was growing as an entrepreneur, it gave me an opportunity to have a diverse portfolio, because every client that I would get would be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
He might be white, he might be an Indian business owner. So what that did, it forced me to have to understand, and I've learned everything about all these different cultures and the temperament and how to approach. So it really gave me a blueprint in understanding how to communicate differently in order to get them to, in order to really get the sale, to get the deal, to get the contract. And so that understanding allowed me to really embrace who I am. And because I realized I didn't have to fit into this little thing that society tells us that we have to do when we get into this creative space. And I was beating myself up for so long, like, man, why can't I get a job? And I almost tricked myself in believing that it was me. But then when I looked at my friends' portfolios and they loving me, like, man, you crushing it. Like, dude, da-da-da. And they would really hire me on the side, you know, for certain jobs. And I started realizing, like, man, it ain't me, it's them. And then when I embraced that, that's when things changed. And that's why I tell all the young designers, embrace who you are. Understand your culture, study it, but study other cultures, and then be okay with the differences, because it's going to really mold you into a way that you're going to be like, and a lot of times you're going to be like, I understand. It might not relate to me because that might not be what my culture is about, but I understand because I spent time with you, and, you know, and honestly, college helped out a lot.
Yes.
Because you got to spend time, like your roommate wouldn't look like you. So you spend time with them every day. You start to bond with them. You love them. You know what I mean? Y'all hook up after summer. Y'all share knowledge. So it becomes a thing. You just got to embrace the journey.
I love it. I love it. Nicte, I had a chance to look at your work, and I'm so glad that you brought up this color piece in your work. Like, when I say you use a lot of color, no. That's probably an understatement. You use an exuberant amount of color. Like, on your site, I'm like, whoa. What was it like when you started doing that in your career? Like, what made you say, you know what, this is going to be my thing. This is the creative piece. This is the cultural piece I'm going to take, is this color.
It was honestly very liberating because I feel like I was at this point, and, you know, I love hearing everyone's stories because I feel like there's so much overlay in the way that we found where we're at. Because when I was younger, you're kind of in this culture of sense of belonging. You want to do what the cool kids are doing. You follow what your friends are doing until you kind of just get older and you discover yourself and what makes you happy. That's when I feel like everything just opened up. And it really didn't happen until I was here in the States, and I was in the middle of, you know, I spoke English, I spoke Spanish, but I didn't feel like I belonged. And I felt like I was kind of being confined to what people should do. Again, too, like, this is where I can totally relate in the sense of Latinos, we're very like, oh, we'll give you a kiss on the cheek. I know that's a no-no here, set aside from the COVID thing. And it can be misinterpreted. So I had to learn to just do the handshake, which still feels very odd to me. I would, aside from what's happening right now, but I would much rather do at least a hug. So learning to embrace those things and find an outlet. And I felt that color was my way to express myself. I tie it into my cultural heritage, but also culture across the world. And I think what really triggered me to do it more so was that I saw people doing it by making assumptions where they're trying to create a campaign or branding or any type of things to a specific demographic, and they just use Dr. Google to tell them what to translate, and it translates horribly, or just, you know, whatever they find on a key search or word search or whatever it is, and oh, these seem to be the colors that they're using. Let me not even bother to find out what these colors mean for the culture. And that's where I felt there was like this huge gap. So that's part of my work, is that I just really just love finding how color impacts the culture. And it's that self-expression and not wanting to hide yourself, but celebrate who you are from your cultural values, your identity, and what makes you you. So I feel like color has been I do not like dressing with like black colors sometimes, because I feel like it also tends to lower my mood. So usually I pump up the color when I'm trying to get like energy, like going, you know, typically. So that's kind of, color is everything for me. And I wish more people would really embrace, especially when it comes to design, and the meaning and the significance behind color, not just finding color harmonies, but really that emotion. Oh my gosh, there's so much power to that.
I love it. I love it. Hung-Hsiang, tell me what the culture is, because I know that you participate in a lot of AIGA events, but I also know you're a member and a community leader in IDSA. So talk to us about crossing this culture line with both of these organizations. What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, good question, right? I think I would say it's kind of like a cultural hopper, right? From country to country, country, industry to industry, right? It's kind of like, in a way that I sometimes call myself, how to say, cultural chameleon. In a way, you need to know when you want to stand up, and you also need to learn how to hide, right? Because that is also important to protect yourself in different contexts. When I kind of give everyone a little bit background, first of all, I really love Omar and Nicte, like the way you articulate about, you know, how is the culture define your work, right? As an industrial designer, I think the challenge is different. So let me frame that for you. It require a much more, how to say, stakeholder along the journey. So it's harder to become a self-expression. And the identity of any individual industrial designer will quickly be diminished along this long decision process, as you can understand, when there are more people want to influence or different constraints, right, kind of put on top of that. So one thing that I would say, you know, to kind of importantly, like before doing any creative work, for me, it's critical to understand what is a condition and a boundary. Doesn't matter it's about the project, but also about the culture, right? Just like how I try to articulate that difference between graphic or visual communication design versus industrial design. That context will shape how we make decisions. That also shape about what kind of culture that you need to, how to say, navigate in between, if that makes sense to you.
Yes.
Okay. So one thing that for any, how to say, for my own learning, right? I think, Jacinda, to respond to your original question about how do you find that ultimate culture, right? I can tell everyone, when I just fresh graduate, I just like want to be the next Steve Jobs, or, you know, you name them, right? Or like, you know, Muscle Wonder, any famous designer. I want to be that. That is my dream. So arrogantly, I just draw and then, you know, just do whatever I believe is right, and then tell everybody, I'm a designer. You have to listen to me. And the result, you know, okay. Lots of like a spank in the hand, just go back to your corner, right? And, you know, and stuff like that. As arrogant as I should be as a young graduate, and I learned my lessons. But along the journey, I also kind of learned that, and I quit the job. Just like, this is not a culture or environment that fits me. I just walk away. And then after several rounds, I realized one thing. Okay, doesn't matter where you are, which country you are, there's nothing perfect. You will never find the culture, because even the culture that you find is good now is organic. Depends on who you work with. They are going to reshape the culture again and again. That means the question is, come back to us. What kind of culture we want is what we want to create. So if we believe this is a value and the culture we want, then we need to shape it. Either is you are the leader or you are the individual contributor in the team, that we need to believe we have the right and the power to influence that and recognize what kind of culture we want and drive towards that direction. And that's actually my takeaway in my life so far. And instead of blaming other people or that is the wrong place, then more like looking to myself, then what did I do to shape that culture that I believe is right for the community?
Yes, I love that. No, to realize that culture itself isn't perfect, right? Like even being able to understand that, you know, the things that you're doing can add into the culture and change it again. I love it. Now, we're about midway through. So I do have some structured questions I want to ask. So I'm going to kind of move to my slide because I want to ask that next big question that I want us to kind of think around for a moment. Since I have talked about how we have different identities, different family backgrounds, different disciplines, different it's all different, right? So what are some examples of the culture in this creative community? What are some of the examples that you've been like, oh, I love that one, or oh, I hate that one?
I can start. I'm going to use not my current working context as example. Hopefully that's okay. Okay. Want to be sensitive. Yeah, but I did actually want to use two examples to share with you. One is about my working in the consumer electronic sector in Asus in Singapore and Taiwan, compared to the working context Denmark, working for a pharmaceutical company called Novo Nordisk. Okay, so the reason I want to show you this too is it's a very interesting contrast. Like when I'm working in Asus, this industry, right? A lot of time is hierarchical. When we say collaboration, is your boss tell you what to do and the team figure out, okay? And then get it done. Doesn't matter it's the time or something. The most crazy thing we ever done is we as a team design a laptop from zero to ready to production in 3 days, as you can imagine, which typically take 3 months, and just due to a certain reaction to our competitor. But what I want to share with you here is in that culture, the value defined is how much you are follow through with the group, right? And then what can you contribute to remove all the obstacles and deliver what you can deliver, and then leave the rest for others. And also speed, and is the value we're talking about. You have to act fast, save money for the company, right, in order to gain the maximum margin for the company. And the margin we're talking about roughly, let's say 4 to 6%, which is quite thin, right? So every time, every minute you waste or any mistake you make actually shave out the margin for the company. Okay. And due to that action, right? And also a lot of time when we do innovation or any project, it's almost like the organization want you to be success and expect you to be success. So if you are really working in the innovation space, that it's like, what? That means in a way we are embracing mistake, right? Fail fast, if you heard about that, and to be success sooner. But that when you shape a culture that never fail, how could that be innovative? And you know the answer, it is not, right? It's about execution, right? And so when I suddenly transitioned to Novo Nordisk in Denmark, I am having a huge cultural shock. Okay, when the reason is suddenly my pace of like a daily schedule or weekly schedule with hundreds of emails flying to me every single day switch to that I don't even have an email, and the team seems really relaxed. The schedule is calculated based on quarter, not even by day. So I was so panicked, like, how are we going to stay competitive, right? If we don't act fast, right? Be competitive, and then save money for the company, that etc. You can imagine. And not till a year later, I learned it's the nature of that industry and that business. Is they embrace and also the culture of that country. They embrace a long-term planning, see far. They don't see anything in front of them. They see something 3 or 5 years behind. So all the planning is already in place. Not only that, like my old work actually would love to see we work hard because it's the value and the culture we embrace. It's totally opposite. When I stay late to work after 5, my boss told me after a month and after I'm bored, they just like, why you stay late? Are we giving you too much assignment? Or do you need more training for do something? And I just like, no, because I want to, because I saw there's a value. They say, actually, it's totally opposite. We actually
Wow.
want you to embrace the work-life balance. We say so, we do so. And once you off work, we don't want you to work. And I just like it get me like 2-3 years to really understand and appreciate that.
Yeah.
So what I want to say, the cultural difference, let's look back to the to the topic is when there's so much, what I want to say is there's so much assumption that I carry with me when I switched from country to country, job to job, that I didn't really spend time to understand that what is the value they are pursuing, what is successful means in that culture, right? What is the ultimate value that what they embraced? One is about career success,
Yes.
not, but on the other is about what did you do outside of your work actually defines you more important than what kind of car you drive,
Wow.
which
Deep,
is
deep.
fascinating to me. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Omar, Nicte, would you all care to chime in on that? Like, what are some examples of culture in your community, in your creative community?
And rather good or bad.
Yep. You can give me one of each, or totally up to you.
So let me say this: I love my city, but there's a problem.
Absolutely. We got to talk about it.
There's a problem. The problem is there's a certain age group or certain people in power who are not allowing the type of change that can literally disrupt the old and bring in the new. It's happening, but it's like a slow leak. It's like it's dripping now. First it wasn't, you know what I mean? That seal is broken, but it's only because of what's going on in the social context, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna elaborate a little bit further. What I've noticed throughout the history of my city, Indianapolis, is we've had so much talent all the way around the board. If you look at the arts as far as musician on a music level, it's so many famous people that played a role in the history of music from Indianapolis. Is crazy.
Yes.
Even artists, right? And very few African-American artists. But it's not because there's no talent, it's because there's a certain groups and certain organizations that are not allowing Black artists to have a little bit more light so we can show the world that, man, Indianapolis do have a culture. So right now, I would say Indianapolis doesn't have a culture along that line because of the diversity issues. I see it on the ground level because I connect with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But as an African American, I'm like, this is the missing piece to the puzzle. Because I'm gonna tell you why. Anytime that somebody who gives me a chance that don't look like me, it's amazing how that relationship just takes off.
Yeah.
Because being open to that, now you can see like, wow. And here's the thing, I'm gonna tell you why I see change happening, because if you look at art now throughout the city, now we're doing more murals.
Yes.
It's a great representation of how the level of creativity that the city has.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I learned historically too, a lot of people, Indianapolis got to be kind of wary about this. And this is what I'm speaking on the ground level to everybody. It's like, we letting our great ones walk away. What is wrong with us? Because we're not embracing our own. We're letting them go outside, go to California and become a huge mogul, whether it's in acting, whether it's in the music. We're losing our own talent when we have the culture here. If we embrace it, we're already the crossroad of America, right? So we wouldn't be a flyover city anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, there's so much culture from the Latino community, from the Asian community, from the, every culture you could think of, because we all know in America, now these areas are sectioned off and we know that there's growth happening. And, and that's what I'm saying. Culture is all around us, but there's certain people that's in power that's not allowing this to happen because rather scarcity, they don't realize you're blocking the money and the opportunity.
Yes.
Because with that diversity, the world is going to pay attention, because they see the beauty in that the fact that it hasn't happened, when it does, it's going to be an open door for so many creatives, even white creatives, to the point it's like, man, we eating for real. Like history's like changed. That's my prediction, because I'm optimistic and I can see that because I watched what Atlanta did.
Yes.
I watched what Cleveland did. I watched what Chicago did. Indianapolis, we gonna miss that boat too. That's my thing. And as long as I'm breathing and playing, able to play any type of intricate role, I'm gonna be there connected. I'm gonna be a voice in some type of way.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I had to be a more effective leader by speaking out, taking advantage of the opportunity to say, hey, we got to work better. Like, don't let your ego mess up something that can historically be a benefit to you as well, because you opened that door.
Yes.
And you got out of your closed mindedness and realized that you are a part of this whole human experience.
I
And
love
so, you know, it's one of those things like we can literally shift the game, and we're in control of that, and it's all through having these conversations. So
I agree.
yeah, I'm very optimistic, and I truly believe that when we do this, I promise our kids are going to be so better off, and they're going to understand something so deep on a human level that we see. Like in Indianapolis, everybody's talking about crime. The only reason why we having a conversation about crime because we're not opening these doors. So what you're doing, you got people getting frustrated. It's bottled up energy. It's, you know, we got literally deserts on the east side, and there should be propaganda speaking on this, because really it's going to get gentrified. I believe that I see it historically how it works, but we're missing our diamonds and gems are right there in the inner city, right there.
Right there. I love that you're able to see like, hey, there's some sort of dominant culture stopping progress, right? Like some of these people who are probably in the dominant culture, I'm sure that a lot of their lack of progress is due to fear. Whereas what you're explaining to us is that you don't have to really fear the diversity. It's actually going to be an asset to all of us.
Yeah. On so many different levels, like from the real estate to creative ideals in the architect industry. I don't know. I can go on and on about this because I see the endless possibility. This is really how culture is created. We navigate, we can see the separation, but the separation could be healthy because now I can share what I've always got a chance to experience. Now you can taste that. The thing that I like about culture too is like when I go to my African friends or I go to my Asian friends, when they share the experience, whether it's food, drinks, things that I've never even had a chance, it really opens me up. It makes me have such a better understanding. And the bond is so beyond, I can't even really explain it. The bond becomes something different because it's like, dude, you gave me a piece of what you grew up in, and I love it. And sometimes they might not like it. Like if I give you something that I grew up and you might not like it, cool. But at least you know what it's like, and that's something that you can add into your memory. Well, hey, I tried this, and they give you that experience. Like, man, I was over in Asia, and I didn't get a chance to experience that, but my buddy gave me a little taste of that, and it became a conversation in the household.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that and telling us more about what's happening in your city. I really appreciate that. Nicte, you get a double question. So we do want to hear your examples, but I also want to know from your examples, how have you navigated that? Like you talked a little bit about previously about how the reason that you use so much color in your work is because it's a self-expression for you. It's being able to kind of just not be bottled up anymore. Like you use examples such as the handshake, which is something that you do, but it's not expressive to you. So what are some examples of culture in your creative community that you like or that you don't like? And then how have you navigated those?
Excellent. So I love it. I have the perfect segment for it because I believe that you can be a part of different cultures and still be yourself, right? Know who you are, stay true to your identity. Like I said, my husband's in the military. So before I married him, I had no idea anything, honestly, about the military culture, unless, kind of what you hear and say. And it was a big culture shock. So it's very different. There's a lot more structure. Even though I'm just a spouse, there are some things that are expected of me to do. There's been some times at events where, like, you know, instead of someone does something and I'm all like, hey, you know, I'm more animated Latina, like, oh, and my husband's like, no, you're kind of more clap, you know, you kind of have to like tone it down a little. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, so you kind of learn to adapt to what this culture is and how it's different. And I feel like that's actually taught me so much more to respect. I know there's this bad thing that Latinos seem to be tied into is like the whole punctuality thing. So he actually, I was bad about that in the beginning, and I want to break it, you know, from like anyone being tied into that. And he taught me to be like, if you're 10 minutes early, you're late, you know, type thing. So it's a very whole different cultural aspect, and that's taught me to embrace more of who I am and stay true to who I am, but also appreciate other places and experiences that you're a part of. And since we move around a lot, we were in Kansas before, we were in Wichita, Kansas. That was my first space with him. Then we were in Panama City, Florida, and now we're in San Antonio. So we've, you know, moved around pretty much to the full circle, because I was in Houston originally. And what I have seen in every place that we've moved is obviously there's different culture. And even though there is a Hispanic community, it's different. And I feel like we're almost forced to a certain way, and I feel like times are changing, and I'm so happy because of that. But I feel like most of the places we're kind of forced to be just, you hang out with your own people, you hang out with your own people, we cannot all hang out together, you know. It's that we're breaking that mold. But in the years that I've been married to my husband and we've moved around a lot, that's how I felt. So I felt very much like an outcast, and I am more like, all right, well, how can we embrace this? How can we become a community? How can I learn from your community so that I can understand and have more of that empathy level of, I get where you're feeling, let me try and embrace you, to find that connection. And that really helped me. When we moved to San Antonio, it was like I felt at home. Even though I was in Houston, I feel like there's culturally, as a city, it's very culturally inclusive. So everyone here, there's a whole week where we have this big event called Fiesta, and it's really rooted on celebrating the Mexican heritage, but everyone here embraces that. So everyone is a part of it. They're listening to the music, everyone's trying to speak Spanish, they're eating the food, they're sharing stories, and it becomes, you have a diverse culture, but it becomes one culture. And I have not seen that in any of the cities that I've lived in until I moved here. And to me, I think there's just so much beauty in that, because it creates this sense of respect. Now there's this embrace of other cultures or a specific culture. I want to learn more about your culture and embrace that more cultural inclusion throughout. And I feel like that's so powerful and so beautiful. And I feel that if we all start to think a little bit more about that, there's a lot of power in that. And one of the things that I feel is very powerful about San Antonio in specific is that we do have Latinos from everywhere. What I've encountered, unfortunately, is that if people think you're Latina or Hispana, and they're like, oh, you're automatically Mexican. And I am Mexican, but I also do have my other cultures and heritage that are different. And it is frustrating for Latinos to not be, to be generalized and say, oh, well, you must be from this one particular country and make that assumption. I think once we start to learn and embrace and really, like I said, empathize and get to know people, is when you really truly start to embrace culture and community and kind of start to bring it together.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Omar, you talked a little bit about your experiences in navigating this Indianapolis culture, right? Especially in the creative community. But one of the things I really would love to learn a little bit more about is, I noticed in your bio that you call yourself an entrepreneur, which I love. But how has calling yourself an entrepreneur helped? Has it hurt? Like, what has that conversation been like in your creative community?
Wow, that's a great question, because it was a mentor that was speaking to me one day. And is that when I speak on this, there's a generational gap between him and I. And so I'm respecting everything that he's saying. Really what he was saying, he was giving me true gems, right? And what, like, so the conversation is, he's a traditional artist. He's probably one of the highest paid African-American artists in Indiana. He does landscape. He's an amazing guy. And he even has success on the business end, in the business world, just running business, a marketing company, whatever, right? One day he told me, I told him, I said, because really I want to be respected in anything that I do, like as a designer, as a fine artist, whatever. I want to be like, if I'm in the fine arts world, respect me for that, because that's what I'm doing. And when I'm in the design commercial world, respect me for that. And then respect the fact that I'm able to navigate in both worlds and communicate in both senses, right? So the conversation between me and him was, Omar, separate the two.
Mm.
And in what he gave me the mind of how collectors work. He said collectors don't want to spend money on art if they know that you're doing design, because they don't know if you're gonna disappear from that world, and the value of your art might not be what they invested in, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might not get the money on the return. So, but he was saying like, you can still be a designer, but just navigate different. And I thought that was great, because I was always trying to figure out how to balance that, right? But then there's a part of me who's a purple cow who's going to push the issue and kind of be like, you know what? When I'm the type of guy, like, I don't want to go into a meeting and have to wear a suit. If I want to wear a suit, it's because I'm in that space. I want to wear a suit, right? If I want to come in like Russell Simmons, let me come in like Russell Simmons, because it's not about what I got on. It's about how I think, what's inside of me.
Yes.
You know, I feel like if a person get a chance to spend time with me, they're going to be like, man, I love this guy. And it's a reflection of that in the community, because I have so many relationships, because I embrace everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And even when they flawed, I don't even judge them. I just, you know, I assess it for, hey, maybe you just misunderstand something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if I, you know, and I just navigate in a way where it's healthy, and I'm a living example of what that healthy looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And if people fall short, we're going to come back full circle. Remember, I said something about everything comes back full circle. And I truly believe that. And there's people that wouldn't recognize me, and I seen them years ago, to now it's like, man, respect. What can I do for you? How can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the change of what's going on in the atmosphere, or they really had a moment of like just experience. Maybe they had some diversity inclusion type courses and it opened them up. But I think all of that stuff is important, because it's education. How can you be so wrapped up in your career that you're not learning about people? Because that's a part of it. You know, you can't really escape that. And so I think I hit everything that I think I got what I was trying to say. But at the end of the day, you know, no, okay. So what I did learn through that, I had to ask myself, how am I going to represent myself as a creative? And I just accepted the fact that I'm just a creative, you know what I mean? And so I went against not what he said, but the way I laid out my business and how I navigate, I laid it out like exactly like how he said, but publicly I'm speaking as a creative. You know what I mean? And I'm letting people know, like, in this society, times is changing. You're going to have to become an entrepreneur. Not only as a designer, you're going to have to understand marketing. You're going to have to understand how to retarget and send ads. So all of these things has been a part of my arsenal. And I realized too, that the fact that I have been a jack of all trades, because I was forced, because nobody gave me opportunity, and I started generating my own capital and start funding my own projects.
Yes.
What I realized was I was COVID-19 ready, because I was developing e-commerce. I was already in the marketing space, and I started already having clients. And then nobody give me a shot but the client, not a major company. And then when I made them the money, I realized, like, wow, I'm making y'all more money than what I'm making right now. Okay. So I started testing it out. So now I'm moving in a space to where I'm going to be able to fund a lot of projects. I'm going to be able to fund a lot of children projects. When I see somebody in the community is doing something really great, I'm going to support that. I'm backing that. I want that child to know that I got their back, and I'm going to support their idea, and I'm going to help them navigate. So I'm just going to use what God has given me and just use that as a tool to help. And then eventually somebody's going to give me some money, because they're going to love my ideas. They're going to love my energy.
Yes.
I want to help this guy, because guess what? I want my name attached to that, because he's doing great things. And that's what this is really about, to show people, look, if you lack understanding and you just pay attention long enough, you'll see how valuable I really am to your organization. You'll realize how I am an asset, and I can be a liaison to my people, and we can really make some awesome things happen.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. So one of the things that I really, really love to do when we're having these types of conversations and talks is I like to give our viewers, people who are watching us, people who are like listening and stuff like that, I want to like give them some nuggets. You know, I want to give them some nuggets, some takeaways. And so what I would like to do is ask ourselves a how might we question, right? Now, you know, we're all designers. We all have answered these kind of questions before. And I know that Herb and the rest of the Midwest team, they are going to archive all of this stuff and they're going to try to do something with this. So I want to be able to say on this panel, on this day, you're going to learn a little bit about culture and we're going to give you some ways how we can create culture across communities. So you don't have to, jump out, say the answer when you want, however, you choose. But I would love if we could do the top 10 list. Now, we don't have to put them in exact order, but we're just going to shout them out. I'm going to write them out. I know Herb and Callie and all of them are going to be watching. So we're going to put this top 10 list together of the top 10 ways how we might create culture across creative communities. So the first thing, I'm going to give the first one. The first thing is, I think the fact that AIGA and IDSA don't do more events together. Why not? We're in the same communities. We're even in the same cities. So my number one thing that I'm going to contribute to the list is, why can't we have true collaboration events? Not like Hung-Hsiang was explaining to us how you said collaboration was when you said, how did you explain that? You said from the top down, do what I say, that's collaborating. So talk to me about what's an idea that you have on how we can do it.
Is this question for me or for the team?
Absolutely. Anybody,
No.
because we're going to come up with a nice list. I put the first one down. So
Yeah.
each of you all should be kind of contributing one.
Yeah. I would say for me there are two, if you don't mind.
Okay.
One is about be curious, right? I think in order to create something, you need to know what is surrounding you. For me, it's very important about the context, no matter how, right? So I actually kind of want to articulate in the way that it's about embrace a tourist mindset. Okay, let me go a little bit further about this one. It's interestingly that when we live in our city, doesn't matter in DC, Cincinnati, Cleveland, somewhere, that we just take as it because this is where we grow, this is how we live, and we take it as a norm. But interestingly, if suddenly I move you to, let's say, Rome in Venice or in Italy, then suddenly your eyes open, everything's new, the chair, the door, the building, like that's interesting. Why? They are just object for people to live, but suddenly because it's not familiar, then your mind's open and then you are start getting connect with that and get curious and want to connect to them. And then you start exploring. And that exploring mindset actually lets you build a lot of empathy and understanding. And that empower you to be able to kind of shape your identity. So that's, I think the first one need to be established.
So I got you down for being creative, being curious, and embracing a tourist mindset.
Yes. Yeah.
I like it. Now, if you think of another one, jump back in, okay? Because we're gonna try to knock 10 out,
No
right?
problem.
We got 3 so far.
Yep.
Nicte, do you have a couple you want to throw in here?
I do.
Come on.
I think we're all in tune, but I definitely do think empathy is a huge one. And empathy in the sense of really getting to know people, kind of like how you get to know your best friend, or when you're in this loving relationship with someone that you get to know them, get to know people in your communities to build that creative community and that culture through empathy, getting to know them. And really, it's not about you sitting down and wanting to tell the world, me, this is what I do, and then you don't let anyone else come and chime in. Ask questions to them, get to know them first. So that way you can see how you can form communities too, because I feel that you have all these personalities that are different. Some people are a little more quiet and could have a world of story to share, but they might be a little more shy and more reserved. And it takes someone wanting to listen to start that conversation with them to start to form these communities. So I feel like it's empathy tied in with inclusion in that sense. And then my second one would be obviously color. Color, I think people don't understand how much. I'm going to drill color for you guys, but it's such a universal language that there's so many things that connect us across the world. I mean, we look at some of the signage, the basic signs. We can know what a stop sign means here in Latin America, overseas, like anywhere. We can tell by the color and the shape. So there's these things that tie and connect us throughout with color, and really starting to use that and embrace that as an expression and empowerment in really connecting communities through color in that sense, and celebrating the heritage and the connection that people feel to those particular colors.
So how would this sound if we summed it up saying create connections through color? What are your thoughts? Create connections. All right. Okay, Omar, I hope you're coming up with yours next. I'm writing these down. Create connections through color. I like that. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I got you down for those two. So I got you down, Nicte, for getting to know the people in your community through empathy. Like, use a little empathy. Talk to the people in your workplace, in your homes, in your circles, in your grocery store. Like, get to know the people who are around you. I like that. All right, Omar. We got two down. We are at a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5, y'all. We have 5.
I would say servant leadership. I think that's key to the journey. I mean, that's, when you got living examples, like in my community right now, like, I mean, I could name a lot of people, but I name somebody who's really inspired me in my city. I would say Tamika Catchings. Spending time and just talking to her and just getting to know her throughout the years, she made me like turn up in a way like I'll give you an example. Just her coming, like, so she has her own tea spot. It's called Tease Me, great cafe spot, right? But Tamika could be in there and she would literally come by and pick up your plate and ask you how your day's doing, chat with you. And it's amazing because she can easily not do that. It's her business. She don't even have to participate in that. And she's always staying grounded. She's always connecting with people, and she will be the first to hug you coming through the door. And I come from a culture where we hug, we embrace. We don't matter, my mother, like I said, I come from a very diverse background. So, I had all different kind of races come over and we treated them, and it was always about love. And I remember when my mother left this earth, one thing that people always said was like, man, your mother had a loving spirit. And that's a reflection of me. And I carry that same thing. I make sure people understand like how much I value them. I give them their roses while they're here.
Yes, I like this. And I love this concept of servitude leadership. This is something that we used to practice when I was a member of the Urban League, right? Like, you are not a leader because you have a title. You are a leader based on how much you serve your community.
Yep.
So I'm glad to add that on the list. Okay, and you said something else, Omar, that I'm going to dig a little deeper and let me know what your thoughts are about this. I love how you talked about it should be about love. Yeah.
I think that, you want me to expand on that?
Please, because what I felt and what I heard was that, perhaps when we think about creating culture across communities, as designers and artists, as AIGA members and IDSA members, as men and women, if we did it in love, right, it would produce a different result.
Oh, it'll be a whole different image. It'll be a whole different landscape. And it'll be probably the most beautiful landscape that anybody can physically see in their present moment. When you operate on love, you get so much out of a person. Like, I work with children, so I worked with children for, big part of what I did early on. I worked with, children that pretty much was in the system, and people pretty much gave up on them. And so what I didn't see a criminal, I seen a child. And when I had these moments with them, they would always pick my brain about entrepreneurship, or they would always like come out their dorm room and like, Mr. Omar, what you doing? Because we have our laptop, and I would be designing at night. And so I would share my experience. And what I would do was, you know, this is a form of love for me, what I would do. And I'm using this as an example. I would sit them down and I would ask them about their dreams and what they love. And I would use my creative experience and what I'm doing at that moment to basically connect the two. And so I would share, like, I'll give you an example. I had a project I was working on. They seen the rough sketch from that perspective. Then they seen it where I had it scanned in, and I showed them that process. And then a week later come by and they see me wearing what I created, and it would blow their mind. They would be like, man, Mr. Omar, I seen you design that from the very beginning. This is unbelievable. And what that did was, years later, when they had grew up and they in the world, and I would bump into them, children, like, they're not kids at this point, they're adults. They come to me and say, Mr. Omar, you literally changed my life. You exposed me to something that I didn't even know I can do. And now look, I'm my own business owner. And I'm literally, as a man, trying to keep it together, because they look at me as a solid, strong African-American male. But I'm literally tearing up inside, like, man. And when I I remember a moment like this where I went to the ride, my vehicle, and I literally was just tearing up and said, this is what this is about.
Yes.
This is why you gotta pour in. Yeah, you gotta pour in, because you're gonna make a difference. And this child that I'm speaking on was a kid that they was written off. But he was driving a better vehicle than I was driving. And I know he wasn't doing no street stuff. Like, he literally knew how to talk. He was talking better. He wasn't like, didn't have no saggy pants or none of that. I mean, he literally figured it out. And I looked and I said, you figured it out, didn't you? He said, I did.
Omar, I pulled another nugget out, and let me know what your thoughts are on this thing, because you guys, we have 8.
Wow, we almost there. Let's go, y'all.
All right, here's what I heard. Pour into your community, right? I love this one because I meet so many designers who aren't active in their community. They just work,
Yeah.
which is great. I mean, you'll have a really great house and you may have a really, really nice car, but you won't have any friends and you won't have a network, right? Like, you know, so being able, I think, pouring into your community, I hear the stories that you're sharing about connecting with the young people. And, you know, I'm a huge youth advocate, so I'm all up for empowering that next generation. But sometimes it's really about something that you shared, sitting down and pouring into someone else, like, to fill their cup.
Yeah.
I always say this: if I didn't want you to grow, I wouldn't water you.
Yes.
And I truly believe that. Like, I look at life like, you know, how I look at the plants, and, you know, I love nature. I'm connected to nature. I've always understood this algorithm that's taking place between me and nature. And I always find a way to get back grounded when I'm under a lot of stress.
Yes.
And really, I just keep watering. And sometimes you have to pull back. You don't want to water too much, because you can ruin that plant. And so it could be overwhelming to that child, to that person that you're trying to communicate with. And so the art form is finding balance in that alone. That's an art form.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
As I start studying people and start studying culture, I just start realizing, like, at first it was like full excitement. I'm pouring in. And then I start realizing some people wasn't getting things done because they was overwhelmed with information. So I start giving a little bit of nuggets and wait for the growth. And when I seen the growth, it's like, I'm gonna tell you what I learned it from. I was a big fan. Like I said, I come from an Asian background, African background, culture, Islam, right? I loved Bruce Lee growing up, right? He was like, he taught me everything. That's one of the reasons why I think the way I think, be like alchemy, flow like water, right? But watching Karate Kid and watching what Mr. Miyagi would do with Daniel's son gave me the understanding, like, oh, give a little bit at a time. And then I start understanding Chinese proverbs, and all of this start making sense. And I'm like, man, I'm breaking the mold in my family. I'm breaking the mold in my generation, because my parents are not even having this conversation.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that, you know, just sharing a little bit of that.
All right, now I'm going to read our top 8 back. It's about, we've got about another 5 or 6 minutes before we're going to allow the audience to kind of also ask us questions and share some of the things that are happening with them. So if you are listening to us right now and you're in the chat, please make sure that we have your chats, your questions in the chat. I'm going to shout out the 8 that we have. My other esteemed panelists, if you have 2 more that you want to dip in here, keep me posted. We're going to start this list off. You ready? Boom. Number 1, collaborate across disciplines. Number 2, be curious. Number 3, embrace a tourist mindset. Number 4, get to know the people in your community through empathy. Number 5, create connections through color. I didn't forget about you, Nicte. I didn't forget about you. Okay, number 6, servitude leadership. Now, I think that was Omar's. Omar's, would you say practice or believe? Like, we need some sort of power verb in front of that. What are your, like, practice?
Yeah, practice. Because if you practice, it become a thing. It will.
Gotcha. We're going to say practice very soon. Okay, practice servitude leadership. Number 7 is operate in love. Operate in love. Number 8, pour into your community, right? And per Omar, don't drown it. Pour into it. Wait till a little bit of growth happens. Pour a little bit more. See how that's going, because you're nurturing something.
Right.
So you don't want to put too much in. You want to make sure that you're nurturing and taking care of it as it grows and it can be stronger.
And I have one to piggyback off of all these.
Come on, talk to me.
Build partnerships. And what I mean by build partnerships is when you are trying to communicate with someone in a specific community that you are not necessarily a part of, and Dr. Google doesn't give you enough real information, partner with someone that is involved in the community, understands that, and will give you the honest feedback. And really treat it as a partnership where you can both speak, have like a safe space so that you can better really like truly connect your communities with wisdom. Partnership.
I like it. Build partners, build partnerships. Yes. Number 9. Okay, y'all.
I will build on top of that. I think the other one.
What you got?
Yeah, I think just build on Nicte's idea, right? I think build a partnership and create a win-win situation for everyone. Yeah. I think sometimes it's not only ourselves, our motivation, what do we want to achieve is on the other side, like with empathy. How can we create a win-win situation for everyone? There is a way that we can influence the culture, because culture about community. It's about our common belief, our common connection.
Yes, I agree. I love that. And the other good thing about, when we create win-win situations, a mentor of mine, George Fraser, says, we always want to make sure that to create relationships where 1 + 1 = 11.
That's a good one.
Right? Yeah, that's the level of the win-win. Where 1 + 1 can equal 11. More than 2, like, come on, that's truly that is what win-win looks like. So I have to tell you all, we did it. Woo-hoo. I know, right? Come on, we did it. We not only had this amazing conversation, we're gonna pour into our own creative communities, and we're gonna leave these nuggets for the next generation, for the next organizations, for the next peoples, for the next persons who are interested in creating community across cultures. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I want to see all of your lovely faces. Yay. And I want to bring Herb back into this. And Herb, I'm not sure, we weren't able to watch all of the chat stuff going on because we were talking and stuff, but are there any questions that you may have noticed in the chat? Any thought process? I know we have another like 7 or 8 minutes-ish.
Did we lose you?
No, I'm still here, but I think we went into another view.
Yeah.
Up there, I think that was it. I think that might have been it. Excellent. So I'm not sure if there are any questions out there. I wasn't able to see all of the stuff that was happening in the chat. So if any of the Midwest team found questions, if they could kind of let us know what some of those are so that we can kind of make sure that we address this conversation, this topic while we're all here.
There are a few questions. We have a few from Steve. Is it difficult to create a community of creatives? I think that's the kind of interesting word there, creatives, in your independent areas.
I like that question. And I know Omar talked a little bit about this. I'm a huge proponent of that as well, as far as referring to ourselves as creatives. It also respects one another, right? You know, it takes that whole barrier of that title that probably really isn't that, like, but calling ourselves creatives, I think that would be one thing that we could really do to build more culture across our communities. And then I also think that being able to acknowledge and really accept someone else's level of creativity, whether it be the same or different, or like, you know, because Nicte uses more color than me doesn't mean it's better than or less than what I'm doing. It's me going, wow, I love that thing that you do. Talk to me about that, share that with me. I want to try to incorporate that in some way. So I think that's another thing. I'm not sure of my other panelists. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
I definitely do think it goes back into that notion of really getting to know your community, because I do feel that there are some of those hidden stories that you may not know, or someone might be in this pivotal point of their career where they're not sure where they really want to go towards, or they may want to go on to entrepreneurship, and you might have already all this wealth of experience, but they might not know how to articulate that. And by really kind of getting to know them, you could even just do virtual coffee with people, you know, just trying to get to know them. And I always believe that there's that power of one. If you can make a profound impact on one person, especially for those of us that are relying on social media to promote business, if you think about it, the power of one, and if you can just make that impact and communicate to that one person and change their lives, you're already making a huge impact on this one person. It's not about changing thousands, but really taking the time to get to know that person and listen, and maybe just share some ideas, give them a safe space for them to feel that they can share their story. You never know, there's like a hidden gem right next to you of someone waiting to share their story. They just need that permission sometimes to share it.
I like that. Anybody else?
That was spot on. I would also add to, you know, when I think as creatives, it's really creatives attract creatives, if that makes any sense. I think there's something that's magnetic that takes place in being a creative, because there's a level of respect that takes place. It's like, dude, you know, I respect, because here's the thing. As creatives, the end, to me, like being a creative is really problem solving. So we're trying to get to that goal and we're just trying to solve. And I can't do it by myself. And if I do try to do it by myself, I'm allowing the ego to take over, and the journey could be bumpy.
Real bumpy.
Yeah, very bumpy. And so over time, even as a creative, I start to understand, put the ego on the shelf. It's not about this, it's not about that, it's about the end result. You know what I mean? And that end result, you might not be that person with that defining answer at that moment. But when you understand the power of collaboration and working together, it's still a team win. And a lot of people don't understand, like, it's not about you. It's about how do we make an impact in what we did together.
Yes.
And then when that happens, the magic happens, and it can be reciprocated, you know, as the journey, you know, moves forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Herb, do you have another question for us? We got about 6 minutes left. You know, I'm trying to get us to at least 7:50 because I know you guys want to wrap up at the end. So.
Yeah, you're fine. We have another question. I think right here. And actually, Nicte kind of just hit on this with the idea of virtual coffee and connecting with people. But I'm curious, and Steve is curious here in the question, what are other ways that folks could be thinking about networking, especially in a time like now, to make these connections and to create these relationships that we've been talking about thus far?
Mm-hmm.
I would say really, you know, being clever and using the tools that we have that are free, like through social media. So like for Facebook, it's the groups, you know what I mean? And then pouring in your network of people who that you know are creative or people that you meet along the journey, pull them in and allow that space to be like, allow that space to be a safe space, right? And create conversation and dialogue and then take it from there. Somebody's gonna have to be the leader within that and get the envelope, you know, pushing it. And then most likely the person who created the group has already got an agenda to try to move things forward because they understand like, man, we need more of this. Or they see a problem in the social context of what's going on and they want to solve that problem by bringing these people in the room. So I think through that, you'll figure it out, you know.
I like that. Using the tools, looking at the people who have started these groups as connectors and being able to learn more from them, reaching out to them, being willing to just pick up the phone and say hello. Like, I think that's something I just really miss that, right? Like, I mean, before we had all of this social media, when you wanted to see how somebody was doing, you just called, right? Like, I haven't heard your voice, like, just call. And I think that for me, one of the things that COVID has reminded me is that I appreciate a good phone call. Like, hello, thanks for calling, right? Because Lord knows we don't need any more. I'm so heavy on email. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
I would actually want to add on to what Omar just shared, right? It's also about, you know, sharing, right? It's not only about stand out as a leader. It's not like as a community you can create. Sometimes it's not just join others, but also how do you stand out and create your community that shape the culture you believe, right? And what you can do is just what Omar did, share. When you share something you create, as we are creative, that you will actually bring people to you. And the people interested in your work and who people curious about you, and then see your progression, and they will actually want to help you. And however, you need to take that first step. You need to have the ownership. Yeah, and I think that's where I learned from Omar in this conversation too.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Herb, we got time for one or two more.
Sure. Yeah. What advice would you have for creatives to keep this momentum going and getting involved in your communities?
I would just add to that by saying, you know, stay inspired and being, you know, live a purpose-driven life, you know, find purpose in what you're doing. Like, just don't do it because it's cool and it's the fad and you just trying to, you know, it's the moment. When you do that, you got shortcomings.
Yeah.
It's when you have a vision, but you don't automatically know how to get there. You just know it's obtainable. You can feel it in your spirit. To me, that's when you start feeling that fuel and passion and purpose behind that. And as you take that step, as we all said on this, it's really just taking that step. And once you take that step, you're like, oh man, okay, I'm a little bit closer. And not even that, just enjoy the small victories along the way. Don't act like you won the championship. Just enjoy the small victories and keep moving forward and look to the next one.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other thoughts, Nicte?
I think for me, to piggyback on what you were saying, Omar, I think there is that knowing what you want to do in life, like really listening to yourself and what your heart tells you and following that. But the caveat with that is don't try and do it all at once because you're going to burn yourself out really quick. I think I learned that the hard way. I'm a parent, so I have a 3-year-old and a toddler, and it's very tough. You kind of have to, I feel like you're the chameleon where you have to have one eye at work and one eye with the other one. And you're not able to do as much as I know I wasn't able to do as much now as before I didn't have any kids. And so giving yourself grace in that sense of saying, you know what, I have these goals to do, but I can't accomplish them all at once. Which are the ones that are, one, going to fulfill me as a person, and two, going to help me work little by little towards these goals and being okay with not meeting them. And it's not about being perfect and getting the fame and glory, but how you feel and the impact that you can make on your community. So I feel like always reminding yourself of that, and I still have to remind myself of that from time to time too, where I try to do too much, is to slow down and be intentional.
Yeah.
So,
And I can add on to that too, is I think it's sometimes like as a creative, right? We are also a lot of time perfectionist, want to make sure we deliver everything's perfect, right? But it's all about these small wins and all the reflection of what we done right, not just point the finger gun on our head all the time, like, oh, we do this wrong, that wrong, keep punishing ourselves. Let's celebrate every success. Like maybe in this situation, you're done 90% right. There may be only a couple percent you're not that good. Yeah, recognize that. However, celebrate the wins, you know, and then kind of using that to fuel your momentum as what we
Yes.
talk about momentum. It's not just try to create a resistance to stop ourselves. It's how do you bring that success forward?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that if you are living purposefully, right? If you are living purposefully, and if you're living purposely, it's not going to be difficult for you to say, hey, I think this is the first thing I really want to try, right? Like, and because it's going to give you the most pleasure. And when you are happy, it comes through your work, right? When you are happy and when you are doing something that you are passionate about, that you are encouraged about, it makes the work even better.
Absolutely.
Her, we got one last one.
We got time. Yeah, let's do it. So this is a really good one. Say you have two different groups in a community that have not always been on the same page,
Oh yeah.
have the same interests and goals. What advice would you give to break down that barrier and combine forces for good?
So state the first part of the question again. I want to make sure I understand it clearly.
So you have two different groups in a community, right? They have not always been on the same page, but they both have the same interests and goals, right? So there's a combined, we want the same thing. What advice would you give to break down that barrier and combine that force to make something good transpire?
I'll start, and then the rest of you all jump in, okay? So I loved our one of our top 10 things here was operate. We say operate in love, right? So if you're operating in love, and you see the synergy, right? Because you see the shared goals, you see the same thing, you know, like, hey, you did that, so did we. You like, right? And so I think if you're operating in love, it's not going to be hard to go across the street and say, you want to do that together next time? Right? It's not going to be hard to find the other person because they're going to be sitting at the edge of the street corner too, like, you guys did that, right? And so I think two things. One, if you're operating in love, it's not going to be hard to go across the street. But then the other thing is that just like you're having that thought, like, wow, we should have thought about that, or we could have did that too. I promise you there's somebody on the other side thinking the exact same thing, right? I promise you there is.
I think I would leverage what Nicte shared earlier about one of the principles she suggests about empathy,
Yes.
right? And also about curiosity, because it's very important that there's tension everywhere, there's no doubt. And however, again, if you really remove you from that conflict or tension, you will find out no one actually willing or intentionally want to sabotage each other. Not at all. Okay. A lot of time they have a shared goal. They just maybe use a different language or different way to operate that create a conflict, and the conflict becomes story. The story becomes an urban myth, and then suddenly the two groups hate each other so much for no reason.
For no reason.
Okay. For no reason. So I would say, you know, always give the benefit of doubt for the other, right? And I would say be curious to understand the other side. That actually will help you to bridge the gap, because again, no one is intentionally want to sabotage the other side. There's no person in this world you will find that like, I intentionally want to just your life to be miserable. Like, come on, like why, right? So it's mainly about how they approach, and just be curious and link that together. You'll be there. Just be patient.
I love that you said the Hung-Hsiang, and I think that tying into what you were saying is, I feel like that is so important to to know the other side first before sharing like my view first.
Yeah.
The other person, because sometimes, and you may not mean to, you might be so passionate about something and you just want to share it with the world, but it can come off as you're the one trying to tell the other person what to do when they may not necessarily know you. And I think that in those situations, because I've been in a lot of those where there's kind of a little bit of clash of opinions and someone wants to be right, the other person wants to be right. And I always say, if you can find one thing that they have in common, start from that and build on to that little by little. Try to find another thing that they have in common, because then once they start to feel like, okay, we align in views in this matter, then they start to feel like, okay, we can work together. You kind of let your guard down in that sense, especially when you may not know each other, you're trying to build, and then ultimately think about what is the end goal? How is that going to help the community? So how can we bridge this communication factor to make that happen?
Yes, I agree. I agree. There was a question in the chat. They are asking for us to share our Instagram social handles and stuff like that. And so I just wanted to make sure that we are putting that in the chat. So far we have Omar's down there. Yep, and we have all three. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we're putting that in the channel. I mean, in the chat box. So you'll have that, as well as it'll be here on the call as well. And it's also on the event page for this particular event. So we'd be looking forward to connecting with you all. Excellent, excellent. Any other thoughts?
I would add in that, you know, if I was in that position, and when I have been in that position, I would just say in those moments, I kind of remind adults to really put the ego to the side and really just think about the children. Because if you really think about it, they're going to look at us and blame us why these things didn't move forward in life. And I don't want to be a part of that history. Not me. You know, I've already seen it and it didn't work, you know, and I watch how it really is. If you think about it, it really keeps America from really being great. If the goal is to make America great, it's really keeping that type of progress from happening. And we got to really ask ourselves, do we really want to be great? Are we just really driven on this thing that we call an ego, which is really a parasite, a disease, you know, and within self, you know, so you really can't allow any light to come in when you're in that space. And I feel like as a creative, you know, I think all creatives can really connect to this. It's really, for me, it's a spiritual experience when I'm creating. I'm actually leaving out of my norm to get to somewhere that I can't even explain. I just know that I'm going there, and I know that I'm gonna deliver based on the tools that I've obtained along the journey. And the end result is really influencing people, making change, you know, through the creation process and the end result of that, and becoming a conversation piece, really, to where it's like, now we can have a conversation, because you can see how my mind can go here or go there, and it might not be for everybody, but I can work with the people that it does connect to, and we'll start there. And then that's where culture will start happening within that moment, you know. Yeah, that's what I would add to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to make sure that we answered as many of the questions as we possibly can. I'm trying to keep up with the chat, so it's like rolling really fast. So please forgive me if I was not able to get your question. I want to engage the Midwest team. But I just want to make sure I also ask if there are any last questions. I know they want to close out special, but I saw Ashton raise her hand up, so I'm like,
There was one more question that popped up here from Abigail. And so she says, when trying to educate and spread culture as a designer, what are some of the most effective forms of communication or ways to use design to spread that awareness, especially when considering the way we are living in the pandemic? She said that she is currently a student working collaboratively in her design classes to work on issues like racial justice.
I like that. Ashton, can you read the question one last time just to make sure I understand it clearly?
So yeah, she says, when trying to educate and spread culture as a designer, what are some of the most effective forms of communication or ways to use design to spread awareness?
I got it. I'm gonna throw out there, I love the design. I love the design process. You know, I teach it a lot to my students in the classrooms and in the community centers and places that I go. And we always talk about brainstorming, right? We always talk about identifying problems. You know, we talk about sharing solutions, and we talk about building, and we talk about prototyping and those types of things. And so I think those are great places to start. It's a thought process you already have as a designer, and in talking with other creatives, as Omar says, they'll recognize that type of thinking, and you might be able to build some sort of commonalities, a common bond based off of that thinking.
I think one of the things is seeing things that people aren't seeing yet and acting on that and becoming a storyteller throughout that. So one of the things that I did recently, we did a campaign for the city of Houston. And initially we're going to take photographs, and we wanted to really include people of color because this was going to be something that reflected the needs of the community and what that meant for affordable housing.
Yes.
And what I found is we couldn't do the photo shoot. So then we ended up trying to look at stock images, and that's a whole nother conversation. But people of color are not depicted in high valued careers like lawyers or anything. And that's across stock imagery where you look, and if you look at it, the skin complexion is very off. So people look watered down, they look weird in the whole setting. So what we ended up doing was creating illustrations. So I did all these illustrations to fulfill that and meet the need. So thinking of ways on how you can use your talents and abilities to tell a different narrative and elevate, in not the sense of this is what's going on wrong, this is where we should be, and this is how we can do better, and show people that. So start showing people across, you know, all these different platforms, lawyers, you know, people of color, you know, people in these high esteemed positions that we, you know, doctors, you don't really see that even with Latinas. You always see when you search a Latina, it's always, you know, 2 pieces of clothing, and that's what they depict Latinas to be. And it's not, you know, so this is where we can shift that narrative through our work.
I'm fully agree with Nicte, right? I think it's about showing the work and showing the progress. I think echo to earlier what we talked about. Sometimes we are so shy about sharing the progress because we are all perfectionism. However, in order to influence the community or the work, you need to constantly using the result. That's also what Omar talking about, right? The result actually what people care. And don't hold on to that result that in the interim that keep pivoting. Just what Nicte also say. In the beginning, we want to do this, but then we pivot to the other, and then we keep solving the problem, move to the other. That progress actually give you the influence as a creative, much more powerful than anyone in your team to really shape that connection.
I would also add to that. I think in communicating, is really learning the art of influence through whatever it is that you're good at. And for me, it's design and it's problem solving. And it's weird because when I think about, I know for me as a designer, I have different, okay, say if I'm with one of my friends who's a white designer, he might struggle when it comes to trying to communicate to other cultures. But for me, it's easier because I just understand, like, just communicate just like I would if I was to meet them in person, and don't overthink the fact, you know, it's really about implementing your experience and through the creative process. And don't get caught up in being right or wrong. Just learn from the if there's a sense of failure in that, if a person feel like there's failure, learn from that and see how you can do it better. And then go back out and test it again. And I tell, when I'm dealing with my children, I just tell them, just do it again, just learn. And what did you learn from it? And I just ask, you know, what did you learn from it? Okay, and then we talk on it, we expand on it. And I don't really try to tell them what to do and how to do it. I realized that I was making a mistake early on in early fatherhood by trying to be in control. I just allowed them to try to communicate back to me. And then I take time to understand and process and realize that, man, their communication is better than mine because I'm overanalyzing all this and I'm creating these my own thoughts in my mind when a child can really just speak their mind and tell you exactly how they feel. So I just learned, you know, part of the communication aspect is just be true to you. Don't be scared, and you'll get feedback. People are going to let you know. And usually, if us as designers, we know if there's a response, whether it's bad or good, we got traction. We're going to figure out what to do next. So I think it's just really what we've all been saying, just go through the experience, just dive in, and you'll find your way.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yay. Great. Thank you all so much for joining our conversation about culture today. I really, really appreciate the Midwest team for reaching out to me and allowing me to help shape the design week. I'm looking forward to seeing all the big bang things that you guys do for the rest of the week, as well as what you all might do next year. I'm going to turn it back over to the Midwest team right now, to Herb, Callie, Ashton, Ashley, all the names, like so many, Jacob, yes, all of you all, Jacqueline, all y'all.
Wow, thank you, everybody. I hope, I have a neck cramp, I just realized, because I've been going like this for like an hour and a half now. So I feel like this conversation could keep going and probably not stop. And I think that's a good maybe piece to leave us on, is that this conversation should continue. Just to remind all of you, you're more than welcome to add your thoughts and ask questions along the way using Slack and connecting out to each and every one of the individuals on the panel. But please, will you all give another round of applause for these amazing folks and their great ideas that they shared with us? We want to thank each and every one of you for also being here tonight with us. And we want to thank our amazing sponsors for helping Midwest Design Week actually happen. Please don't forget, we're only in Wednesday. There's so much more. We have all day tomorrow and an amazing keynote lecture on Friday night with Teresa Moses. So stay tuned, and we will see you all tomorrow morning, hopefully. Have a great evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jacinda, for facilitating.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And thank you so much. I'm going to learn to say your name. I'm telling you, I'm going to talk to you more so I can get better at it.
No problem. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thank
All
you.
right, then. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.